Hey, YouTube says I'm live. Good evening, everyone. Gordon Causey, a Canadian take on news and current events. And Candy the Wonder Pup, as always, is here. Yeah. And her claws. Uh, yes, you're a good girl. So before I get going, I'll start the way I normally start. Okay, sit down. Let me get it out. It's in my pocket. All right. Shake. Lay down. Lay down. Lay down. 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 Speak. Down. Speak. 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 There we go. There's a speak. Good girl. You did good, girl. Up. There you go. Candy is taken care of. As always, thank you for liking, and to everyone who has subscribed to my channel. Simply a Joe Nobody Canadian living in southeastern Ontario, Canada, injecting my thoughts, views, and opinions into the public discourse. And thank you for everyone supporting my channel. Unmonetized and pathetic and miserable as it is appreciated. I'm going to be talking tonight about ethnic cleansing. This is not going, normally what I do is I simply go off the top of my head, the thoughts that are ruminating around in my addled, tiny, and perfect little human brain. However, tonight what I'm going to do is I posted something to my Facebook timeline, and I'm going to be reading from what I posted. I'm probably not going to read it verbatim, word for word, exactly as I wrote it, but I'm going to use it as a guideline, sticking pretty close to the text. So without any further ado, I'll get on to it. So I've switched over to my Facebook screen so I can see what I wrote. And it's about, this term ethnic cleansing. Ethnic cleansing is a long established tactic of dominating powers. We can just look back from a Canadian perspective on how Canadians, how we treated the Indigenous First Nations population when Europeans came over here and when Canada was established in 1867. You can look at the way the United States treated its the Indigenous Native population in their country. In Canada, we had the residential schools. In the United States, the Indian Removal Act, which I believe came into effect in the 1800s under Andrew Jackson, comes to mind. That Indian Removal Act led to something called the Trail of Tears, which I'll invite you to read up on your own if you're not familiar with it. But I've done some reading up on this term, ethnic cleansing. And according to the United Nations, it's actually not even a recognized international crime. A country cannot be formally charged with the crime of ethnic cleansing. There may be aspects of there may be ethnic cleansing may take place, but it's the activities around ethnic cleansing that may be considered international crimes or crimes against humanity, but not ethnic cleansing itself as a term. And I can rationalize that. I can see how that makes sense, because so much of the Western world has engaged in, broadly speaking, ethnic cleansing. Canada and the United States, as I mentioned, Great Britain, Spain, France, all the old colonizing empires of the world, and that would include the Arabian empires. So ethnic cleansing has been around going back to biblical times. But before I go on, I'm just going to read off what the UN has down as basically loose definitions. And it should be noted that there actually is no single agreed upon definition. This term ethnic cleansing only came into use during the war in what was formerly Yugoslavia, which eventually broke up into Bosnia-Herzegovina, Croatia, Serbia, Montenegro. I think what used to be Yugoslavia eventually was rendered into 5 or 6 different countries. So here are the ways that the UN describes ethnic cleansing. Number 1, they have rendering an area ethnically homogeneous by using force or intimidation to remove persons of given groups from the area. And then their second definition, and again, loose definition, is a purposeful policy designed by one ethnic or religious group to remove by violent and terror-inspiring means the civilian population of another ethnic or religious group from certain geographical areas. And maybe these definitions aren't perfect, but I do think they provide a decent framework from which to judge events throughout history. And as I said earlier, that goes all the way back into ancient history and right into more modern times. I think a good early example of ethnic cleansing would be from ancient times when the Assyrian Empire conquered the northern kingdom of Israel, as recorded in the Bible, and it's also backed up by archaeological evidence. Basically, the kingdom of Israel had split in two after the reign of King Solomon. The northern kingdom retained the name Israel, and the southern kingdom became known as Judah, the kingdom of Judah. And when the Assyrians conquered that northern kingdom that retained the name Israel, they expelled most of the Jews from the area, although at that point they would be Israelites. And the very few who remained were basically assimilated into the broader Assyrian population. And this is where, when people talk about the lost tribes of Israel, the lost 10 tribes, this is where it comes from. They were basically erased after the Assyrian conquest of the northern kingdom of Israel. A later example, and one sticking to my Canadian background, and I've spent some time out in this part of the country, would be the expulsion of the Acadian French in what is today, present day, Nova Scotia, Canada. The British and French, they've been millennia old history of conflicts between the Brits and the French. And back in the 1750s, when Great Britain conquered French Acadia, New France, there was no way that Protestant Britain wanted this newly conquered territory populated by French Catholics. And most of the population were deported down to Louisiana, forcibly removed and sent to an area of Louisiana. And this is after the French had established themselves in Acadia for around 150 years. They'd had a continuous presence in what they used to call Acadia, and then it became Nova Scotia. And then we can move on into more modern times, and we can look at Jordan, which was the first country that was carved out of the British Mandate for Palestine in 1921. I've mentioned this in previous videos, but I'll just reiterate the point that the British Mandate for Palestine was established in 1920 in the wake of World War I. They had a conference on the Italian Riviera at a place called San Remo. So it's called the San Remo Conference. And it was there that the Mandate for Palestine was created. And Palestine, the geographic area of Palestine, included all of present-day Jordan, all of present-day Israel. And the first nation created out of the British Mandate for Palestine was Jordan. That happened in 1921, the year after the mandate was created. Transjordan, as it was known then, when it was created, it was known as Transjordan, was an emirate state and a protectorate of Great Britain. The Transjordanians denied citizenship to the Jews, and Jordan was very soon a Palestinian state, but only for Palestinian Arabs, with a small number of Christians and Druze allowed. They ethnically cleansed their new country of Jews. There was one small town that was allowed to have a Jewish population because they needed, there was a power plant established there. The Transjordanians needed Jewish capital, Jewish expertise, because their new country needed electricity, hydroelectricity, so they were tolerated in this one place, but eventually it was overrun and Jews were ethnically cleansed from the area. So that's 1921 forward. Then we can go to the first Arab-Israeli War of 1948. And during that war, so I've gone over this in my previous videos, but we have a Palestinian state of Jordan that got created in 1921. And then all that remained of the British Mandate for Palestine was the small landmass that is Israel today. It included the West Bank. I don't know whether it included Gaza at that time or not. But anyway, the small 25% of the mandated territory that remained, a war ensued because Jews declared it as an independent Jewish nation state by giving it the name of Israel, and 5 nations of the Arab League attacked. And so Israel in 1948 was not a recognized country because there were 5 countries fighting over it, along with a nation that had only declared itself unilaterally as a nation, but the UN did not recognize Israel as a nation state until 1949. So the area is very much in limbo while they wait to see how this war settles out and who gets control of what. And it was during that war and afterwards, basically Jordan gained control of both the West Bank and East Jerusalem. In East Jerusalem, they forcibly removed the Jewish population from that part of the ancient city. They didn't care that there had been a continuous Jewish presence in East Jerusalem for more than 1,000 years. A Jordanian, by 1946, in the year 1946, Transjordan gained its full independence from Britain and was no longer a protectorate. They changed their name from Transjordan. The official name of Jordan became the Emirate or Kingdom of Hashemite Jordan. The Hashemites are the ruling dynasty that govern Jordan. So by 1948, it's not Transjordan anymore, it's Jordan. And again, they conquered East Jerusalem, and Jews had lived there for more than 1,000 years, but they got rid of all of them. And a Jordanian commander bragged that for the first time in 1,000 years, not a single Jew was living in East Jerusalem. And the synagogues and Jewish homes and institutions, any Jewish buildings, they were either destroyed or repurposed. Now, when it comes to Palestine, I have a problem with this term because for me, Palestine refers to all of present-day Israel and all of present-day Jordan. Things do get complex. And I find that, what I refer to as the double-digit IQ set, they simply ignore historical fact and anything that contradicts a biased view. I mean, the fact that Palestine was established as a mandate for the British in 1920 at the San Remo Conference, that's simply historical fact. But this, as I call them, the double-digit IQ set, they like to pretend that never happened. Just ignore those parts of history that are inconvenient. So just ignore them. So Jordan engaged in ethnic cleansing both in 1921 when Britain handed them 75% of the land of Palestine, and they got rid of their nascent nation. 1921, newly created, they got rid of the Jewish population, and again they did it in 1948 when they conquered the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Now, in 1948, this is when Israel declared itself unilaterally independent and then won the war against the 5 invading nations, including Jordan, Egypt, Syria, Transjordan, and Lebanon, 5 against 1. and the Jews won, but they didn't really win everything. They failed to win the West Bank, which was, and at that point, up until then, the West Bank had remained a part of the British Mandate. So Jordan took that over, and they took over East Jerusalem. And they ethnically cleansed the Jews. The Jews had somewhere to go. They established what's called the Green Line borders. And so the Jews who were living in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank and East Jerusalem simply were ethnically cleansed from those areas, and they moved into the newly established nation of Israel, which again was recognized finally by the UN in June of 1949. And no one talks about that, but Jordan has never been a democracy. It's an emirate, which is simply emir is an Islamic or an Arabic term for king. So it's a kingdom. So, they don't have to concern themselves with democratic sensibilities. And besides, it's been done, as I enumerated, throughout history. There's nothing new here. And at the time when Jordan was created, again, when it was first created, it was Transjordan. There was still 25% of the old mandate for Palestine, and Jews could move to it. Jews could move to the Jewish part. And I mentioned, I've written about, talked about how Jordan did actually allow one Jewish town or a power plant. They needed the Jewish money, Jewish expertise for the hydroelectric power. But after that 1948 war, it was eventually overrun and ethnically cleansed of a Jewish population. And likewise, the other Palestinian nation of Israel also engaged in ethnic cleansing, same as the Arabs. They weren't handed their country on a silver platter like the Arab Palestinians got with Jordan. They had to fight a brutal, nearly year-long war, again, against those five nations to secure borders of what remained of the mandate for Palestine. And that mandate expired on May 15, 1948. And again, Jordan actually, Israel was established, and Jordan actually was able to expand its territory, its land holdings, by getting, as I mentioned, East Jerusalem and the West Bank. Now, the Arabs, the so-called Palestinians, they'd been hoping to take over the entire mandate. They wanted the remaining 25% as well. And they left the 25% in large numbers. Some left prior to the war, some left during the war, during the fighting, and some after Israel defeated those five nations. So, we had this year-long war, or nearly year-long war, which started May 15th, 1948, and then ended sometime in March of 1949. So before the war happened, while the war was taking place, and then after it was concluded, a lot of Arabs, who are now called Palestinians, fled out of the new nation state of Israel. They went to places like Jordan, like Lebanon, Syria, Egypt. And it's estimated that number is somewhere around 700,000 to 800,000. This is what is referred to in Arabic as the Nakba, which translates into English as the catastrophe. You go five nations against one newly created nation and you lose. Yeah, that's a catastrophe. Now we fast forward. Now we're in the present day. And the question now that people are talking about ethnic cleansing again, it's coming up a lot more with respect to the Gaza Strip. And I'm certain that there are members of Netanyahu's coalition government who absolutely want the territory of Gaza, and they want it for to be part of Israel proper and to be populated by people loyal, people who are predominantly Jewish and who are loyal to the nation state of Israel, which would mean removing pretty much all of the existing population. The same way that Jordan got rid of Jews from their territory. I'm sure, and maybe even Netanyahu himself would want Gaza to be part of Israel proper, not an occupied territory, but Israeli territory proper. But again, Israel isn't an emirate kingdom like Jordan. It's a democracy. So I think there's a higher bar of expectations placed on Israel. So the double standard that exists. So many of the crimes that Israel is accused of having committed, they've had committed against themselves from their inception. So I'm going to go away from my text now. If anyone wants to leave up a comment in the live chat, you're welcome. But there's this double standard that exists, and I can't help but believe that a large part of the reason for this double standard is, it's okay that the Arab world does not tolerate Israel's existence. Not saying everyone, but there's a large element. It's in the covenant of Hamas, which I believe their founding document for Hamas. It's called the Covenant of Hamas. I know that. I believe the year, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe the year that the covenant was written was 1988. And it's their stated objective to wipe Israel off the map, to push all the Jews into the sea, or either kill or remove or just wipe them out. And then to have their land, the land that is now Israel, to be an Arab state. And that's okay. This is the double standard. People don't have an issue because, and I think it boils down to what is typically referred to as anti-Semitism. I prefer the term Jew hatred. There are a lot of people who simply hate Jews because they're Jewish. And I could do a video on that. I mean, this goes back centuries. This goes back millennia. It goes back to the 2nd century, I think, is the real genesis of this hatred that is held toward Jews. And I think a lot of it is a lot of it is from my own camp. I'm a Christian professing Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. But I think it's the 2nd century church that was hijacked by individuals like Tertullian, by Ignatius of Antioch, Justin Martyr. There are some others. I'm not remembering all the names right now. Three is not bad. And they absolutely hated Jews, promulgated this idea that Jews were Jesus killers, that they had engaged in deicide. They killed the Word made flesh. And so some of the things, if you want to read up on Justin Martyr, Ignatius of Antioch, Tertullian, Irenaeus is another one, and what they viewing Jews as being almost a subhuman species of humanity. And the simple fact of the matter is, from my perspective, that Jews are every bit as flawed, as sinful, as stiff-necked as any other ethnic population of people. They're no better and no worse. And I don't want to turn this into religious. I don't want to use this video as a platform to expound and go forth on a religious tangent. I do that in other videos, but I'll hold back now. But anyway, that's what I had to say. The question that often comes out of this is, what is the end game? What is the end game? If Israel wins, if they succeed in defeating Hamas, I don't think they can defeat Hamas. Maybe as a political entity, they can defeat Hamas, but not the ideology that is behind Hamas and the actions since the October 7th attack, when Israel is engaged in an absolutely brutal, aggressive war in its efforts to wipe Hamas out. This is now a breeding ground for, now there are Arab Gazans who are more committed than ever to the stated objective of wiping Israel off the map. And that's simply a reality of the situation. The same thing in the West Bank. With what's going on, it's just furthering these. At the same time, what is Israel to do after an attack like October 7th? Just say, oh, well, it's okay. You murdered goodness knows how many of our citizens, 11, 12, 1,300 of our citizens. You kidnapped babies, you kidnapped infants. You indiscriminately killed innocent civilians at a music festival, but that's okay. We're not going to retaliate because we understand you're angry. You want to wipe us off the map. You don't want us to have a country. And I mean, the situation is so, too many people look at it from a very simplistic kindergarten level understanding. And, we have this word colonialism that gets tossed around by these woke left types, the types who can't decide between what a man and a woman is. And they love this term now, colonialism, and it's used in a pejorative fashion, like it's a bad thing, where it's been, in France, Britain, England, Spain, China, the Japanese, the Arabians themselves have all engaged in colonization. The people of the Arabian Peninsula colonized. We still refer to the Arab world, and the Arab world includes places that are not Arabian. You'll see a map and it'll say, this is the Arab world, and includes North Africa, and go into Eastern or go into Asia. And this is referred to as the Arab world. Why? Because this is the area that the Arabs colonized. So they're colonizers. Everyone is colonizers. It's simply a case of the winners colonize and the losers get subjected to ethnic cleansing, and the only difference is who wins. If Canada's native population had the capacity, they would have colonized. It's just human nature, and a sad, broken part of our human nature. So I'll end it off by saying that we're sad, broken, sinful, evil by nature, and that's why we need Jesus Christ, which is something else that is in this new woke left-wing world gets pushed to the side. But anyway, thank you for watching. God bless. I welcome any comments. No one left anything up in the live chat, but if you want to see this later and you want to leave up a comment, I will try to respond. I try to respond to everyone. And if you're inclined to give me a thumbs up, it's appreciated. And likewise, if you want to subscribe to this miserable, pathetic, non-monetized station with an old white guy who is supposed to have no voice in the world, you're most welcome, and it is very much appreciated. So I'll end it off by saying thank you for watching, and God bless. We'll see you again.